I work in an office building for a big company. When things get slow and boring, I sometimes go to the restroom to take a break. One day as I entered the restroom, what was supposed to be an ordinary break turned out to be a terrifying experience inside what they call the Backrooms. This is my story. The day was mundane until the very moment I pushed open that door. The expected chill of the restroom tiles and the scent of generic hand soap never greeted me. Instead, I was faced with an endless maze of rooms. The sharp contrast between what I expected and where I was left a pit in my stomach. The rooms had a haunting familiarity: yellowed wallpaper, outdated fluorescent lights, and a carpet that had seen better days. "Okay, this isn't right," I whispered, my voice shaky. Where the hell was I? I tried to make sense of it, running a hand through my hair, my eyes darting around, but there was no door behind me, no exit, no way back to the office corridor I was just in. A chill ran up my spine. I shook my head, trying to dispel the mounting sense of dread. "Stay calm, just find a way out," I murmured, my voice barely audible even to myself. I started to move, choosing a direction at random, half hoping I'd suddenly wake up from this bizarre dream. But every room was identical. Each time I entered a new one, hope that it'd be different, that it'd offer a way out, was crushed. The soft hum of the lights and the muffled sound of my footsteps on the worn carpet were the only things breaking the heavy silence. My heart raced. How much time had passed? It felt like hours. I tried to recall anything, any sort of logic or reasoning that could explain what was happening. Was this a prank? Some sort of experimental art installation? A dream? "Come on, think," I muttered, frustration evident in my tone. My eyes kept searching for something, anything different, and then in the distance one of the rooms seemed off. Not much, just a subtle inconsistency. The wallpaper in one corner looked slightly darker. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Please let this be something," I whispered. As I approached, the difference became clearer. It wasn't just a shadow. It looked as if the wallpaper was being pressed from behind, almost like there was something behind it. My fingers brushed against the surface, feeling the indentation. The wallpaper gave way slightly, revealing a hidden latch. Trepidation surged. Was this a way out, or just another layer of this twisted place? Taking a deep breath, I pulled the latch, praying for an escape from this relentless yellow maze. In this never-ending maze of rooms, time became a vague concept. The monotonous hum of the fluorescent lights overhead droned on endlessly, distorting my sense of passage. I tried to mark time by counting rooms, then footsteps, but soon, even that became meaningless. The patterned carpet, with its faded hues and worn-out patches, seemed to stretch onto infinity, becoming an unchanging companion to my growing despair. Every so often, I'd pause and listen, hoping for a sign, anything to hint at an escape or to break the choking stillness. In those moments of heightened awareness, I'd occasionally catch what sounded like soft whispers or the distant, muffled shuffle of footsteps from somewhere nearby. Each time, hope would flare up, igniting a brief spark in the bleakness. But like a cruel joke, whenever I followed these sounds, they would lead me to yet another identical room, with its same unyielding walls and that damned yellow wallpaper. I'd stand there, defeated, trying to fight the despair threatening to engulf me. "Is anyone there?" I'd call out, my voice echoing back at me, serving as a grim reminder of my isolation. The room seemed to mock my desperation. Sleep became an erratic companion. Whenever exhaustion took over, I'd curl up in a corner, trying to find some semblance of comfort on the coarse carpet. Dreams and reality blurred, making it harder to discern when I was awake and when I was trapped in some nightmarish vision. In these moments of hazy consciousness, the weight of solitude bore down on me. The rooms felt like they were closing in, the walls pressing against me, while the oppressive silence sought to suffocate any remnants of hope. It was becoming harder to distinguish if the whispers and distant sounds were real or just products of my fraying sanity. Doubt started to gnaw at me. Was this a test? Punishment for some forgotten sin? Or had my mind simply unraveled, plunging me into this twisted reality? The thought terrified me, but the more I tried to remember how I got here, the more elusive the memories became. I found myself talking aloud, the sound of my own voice becoming a lifeline. Conversations with imagined companions, debates with the room, or simply recounting stories from a past that seemed increasingly like a dream. These soliloquies served as an anchor, a way to assure myself that I still existed within this unyielding expanse. Yet, amid the despair, a stubborn resolve began to form. I wouldn't let this place defeat me. Every room I entered, every sound I chased, became a step in my relentless quest for an exit, a way back to reality, or at the very least, a break from the tormenting solitude. As the indistinguishable days wore on in this baffling expanse, the rooms started behaving in odd ways. Initially, the changes were so minute that I wrote them off as figments of my overwrought imagination. A door slightly out of place from where I remembered, or a patch in the wallpaper that appeared to shift when I wasn't looking directly at it. But it wasn't long before the alterations grew impossible to ignore. One room's floor seemed to slant, forcing me to stagger and clutch the walls to keep from tumbling. Another had a ceiling that seemed to either stretch to infinity or press oppressively close, dependent upon the angle from which I viewed it. Walking through some rooms became an ordeal in itself. The distance from one door to the other appeared to stretch with every step, making the opposite end seem perpetually out of reach. It felt as if the room was toying with me, warping reality to keep me trapped within its confines. These disorienting shifts started to take a toll on my mental state. My mind, starved of any real external stimuli, began spiraling into dark, echoing chambers of introspection. Shadows of past memories played out on the yellow walls, memories I hadn't visited in years. Silly quarrels, lost friendships, missed chances. Every choice, every twist and turn of my life started replaying, making me question the paths I had chosen. Regret became a near-constant companion. The sting of words left unsaid, opportunities missed and love lost, began to manifest physically. The air grew thicker, denser, every breath I took laced with the bitterness of past mistakes. It was as though the backrooms were dredging up these memories, amplifying my regrets, and using them as another layer of torment. I would often find myself talking to these memories, trying to plead, negotiate, or even argue with them. Conversations with shadows of people long gone from my life, attempting to find solace, seeking closure. "I should have been there for you," I'd whispered to a fading memory of a childhood friend, or "I'm sorry," to an old love whose face became harder and harder to recall. In this realm of ever-changing walls and floors, where reality bent and twisted in unsettling ways, it was becoming increasingly difficult to separate the tangible from the imagined. Was I really seeing these past moments, or was my mind, in its desperate need for interaction, merely conjuring up these vivid hallucinations? Even my own reflection became a stranger. Peering into the occasional dusty mirror or the reflective surface of a window pane, I'd catch glimpses of a haggard, worn-out version of myself, the strain of the place etched into every line on my face. With each deceptive room, every haunting memory, the boundaries between reality and delusion blurred, leaving me trapped in a world where I could trust neither my surroundings nor my own mind. The cruel and unyielding grasp of the backrooms began to erode the very essence of my sanity. Days, or what felt like days, merged into a singular stretch of haunting monotony. The sound of my footsteps, the relentless glow of the overhead lights, the omnipresent yellow hue, all melded into a consistent nightmare. It was clear. My mind was waging a war against me, and I was losing. Desperate for any semblance of company, I often found solace in speaking aloud. Conversations with myself became the norm. I'd recount old stories, recite poems, or even sing fragments of songs that came to mind. Sometimes I'd narrate my own actions, like a detached observer, just to break the soul-crushing silence. But the rooms had a way of playing tricks with sound. My own voice would often reverberate back, sounding strangely unfamiliar. At times it was distorted, either unnaturally deep or shrill, and sometimes it felt like it was coming from a distance, as if I were in a vast, echoing cavern rather than a confined space. But the real terror occurred when I stumbled upon a room, different from the others. This one was lined with mirrors on all sides. At first the sight was almost comforting, a break from the endless yellow, but as I moved I realized with a jolt of dread that my reflections weren't in sync. They trailed my movements, each action mirrored back to me with a haunting delay. It was as if these reflections had a will of their own. My eyes locked onto one, watching in horror as the mirrored version of me slowly grinned back, a look of malevolence distorting its features. Panic surged through me. I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet in my haste to flee. As I sprinted out of that grotesque room, the chilling laughter of my own voice echoed around me, amplifying my terror. My heart drummed loudly in my ears, its rhythm frantic and wild. As I ran, gasping for breath, the line between reality and illusion became even more tenuous. Was this all some kind of sick, drawn-out dream? Would I suddenly jolt awake, drenched in sweat but safe in my own bed? The thought was tantalizing, a beacon of hope. But as the rooms continued, as the isolation and dread persisted, the hope began to wane. Every corner I turned, every door I pushed open, led to more of the same, and despair settled in like a relentless weight on my chest. The distinction between wakefulness and dream, reality and delusion started to blur. I longed for the comfort of the familiar, even if it was just the simple act of waking up from a nightmare. Yet with every passing moment, the nightmare seemed to be my new, torturous reality. The relentless sameness of the Backrooms had worn me down to a nub. With each room I traversed, despair clung to me, growing heavier and more suffocating. The idea that this would be my eternity, a never-ending loop of yellow walls and fluorescent lights, was too daunting to bear. It was amidst this bleak mindset that I found myself entering a room, a stark departure from the rest. Here the wallpaper was untouched, its yellow hue somehow more gentle, less mocking. Dominating the room was a solitary wooden chair, perfectly positioned in the center, bathed in a soft light from above. It looked inviting, a beacon amidst the madness. My body, weary from the emotional and physical exertion, drew me to the chair. Collapsing into its embrace, I felt an unexpected comfort enveloping me. The chair's simplicity and the calmness of the room provided a stark contrast to the chaos I had endured. I took a moment to close my eyes, shutting out the external world. Deep, steadying breaths became my anchor. The frantic pace of my heart began to slow, and for the first time in what felt like ages, my mind was clear of the encroaching panic. Visualizing a way out became my singular focus. I imagined a simple door, its wooden frame just like the countless others I had seen. But this one would be different. It would be a passage back to the world I knew. I concentrated on every detail, from the cool metal of the handle to the slight creak it would make as it opened. When I finally dared to open my eyes, there it stood, just as I had envisioned. A plain, unassuming door, eerily reminiscent of the one through which I had first entered this hellish maze. A mix of hope and fear gripped me. What if it was just another deceit of the Backrooms? But I couldn't let this chance pass. I slowly got up, each step towards the door filled with a mixture of dread and anticipation. My hand, trembling slightly, reached for the handle, turning it with bated breath. The sight that greeted me was nothing short of miraculous. The all-too-familiar restroom corridor of my office building. The mundane hum of fluorescent lights, the distant chatter of colleagues, and the subtle scent of office coffee permeated the air. Stepping out into the real world felt surreal. Everything seemed sharper, more vivid. The mundanity I had often lamented now held a beauty I had never recognized. The Backrooms had pushed me to the brink, testing the very fabric of my sanity. Yet here I was, having navigated the treacherous depths of my own mind, and emerging, not defeated but resilient and with a newfound appreciation for the everyday reality we often take for granted.